In our second project for Adobe Flash, we're going to create an animated bicycle rider, similar to what you see here, sort of a graphically created shape using Flash Flash drawing tools. We're going to create the shape. We're going to base it on a photograph, like so. This is a photograph that I downloaded from Getty Images, and we're going to base our graphic on that. And when we play it back, the animation will have rotating pedals, and it will also have the legs moving with the pedals, and there is going to be a third element that's animated, either hair or a scarf that will be animated to make it look like it's flapping in the wind as this bicycle rider is pedaling. The way we accomplish this is we're going to implement a slightly different version of animation from our last project where we used the motion tweens. In this project we're going to use traditional frame-by-frame animation. The one thing that is slightly different though from the normal animation is that we're going to package each one of these animations into a self-contained animated symbol. For example, the pedal animation that you see over here in the library, we have a symbol for pedal animation. When I double click on it, it shows me just that, and it is a symbol that has its own timeline. When I move the playhead over it, you can see how the pedal, or really one half of a pedal, moves in the circular motion, and we're going to be reusing or using this pedal symbol twice in our timeline, one for one half of the pedal, and then the other half of the pedal will use the same symbol. We'll just offset the animation by 180 degrees so that we get the complete two pedal animation going. The same thing is going to be true for the leg itself. So we're only creating the animation for one leg, and if I move my playhead over here, you can see how the leg is moving in the circular motion, and we'll make it so that the foot follows exactly the motion of the pedal. And the way this is broken apart here is it consists of three pieces: the upper thigh, the lower leg, and then the shoe are graphical elements that we are combining and rotating and positioning so that we achieve this animated effect. The hair is slightly different in that we have an animated shape, or a shape that is created using the pen tool, and then we're going to simply vary the outline of the shape to make it look like it is blowing in the wind as we are moving our playhead over these different keyframes. So this is the animation that we are going to create. I'm going to press Command Return to play this back momentarily so that you can see what it looks like in the final result. So this is sort of the level of detail, not exactly this shape or this character that I want you to create, but sort of the level of detail that I'm expecting from you to have a nicely or a reasonably rendered character using shapes that you create using the built-in Flash drawing tools. So in order to create this, I'm actually going to use a slightly different image to create this, and this is actually the image that I'm going to be using in this video because it has a slightly different bike rider, and the pedal positions and things like that just kind of lend themselves a little better. And I'm going to use, instead of a fully fleshed out character, I'm going to use sort of a stick figure approach in this video to show you how the animation functions and how to put this project together. Let's switch over to a browser and download this image from Getty. I've loaded up Getty Images in my Firefox browser, and I've already logged in using the AIMD student account and the password that goes with it. So I'm going to search for bike, and I make sure that I have premium access images only selected and do a search to find images of bike riders and images with bicycles in them. I also have created a little light box called Uwe, UWE, that you can access when you're logged in as a student, and there's 3 images, and one of them is the bicycle that I'm going to select. You want to download this image using the Premium Access download, and I've already done that, so I'm going to open this image up in Photoshop and crop it to just the right dimensions. Here I am in Photoshop and I have the image loaded already. I'm going to use the crop tool, and I'm going to set my dimensions to 550 px for 550 pixels wide and 400 pixels tall, which is the dimension of my stage in my Flash project. So using the crop tool, I can select the area that has exactly the right aspect ratio, and I'm going to rotate it slightly to make the bottom of the tires line up with the bottom edge of the screen. So when I work on my bicycle, I want it to be nice and level, and I'm going to make it big enough so it fills the screen fairly well. So here I am. I'm going to click on the check mark, and this is my file that I'm going to save and then import into my Flash project. I'm back in Flash here, and in order to get my project going, I'm going to create a new file in Flash, and I'm going to choose an ActionScript 3 project. And here I am, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to load the image that I had saved earlier in Photoshop to the stage and import it here. And the bike rider cropped version, this is what I'm loading here. This is what I had saved earlier. And if you have it sized right, it would probably automatically snap to the right dimension. In case that's not happening, you can use the Align tool to make it center both vertically and horizontally, and then it should perfectly match your stage dimensions. Since this is our guide, I want to turn it into a guide by selecting Guide from the drop-down menu that you get when you right-click on the layer. This ensures that the guide image is not included when we are exporting our Swift file to keep the file size down, and we really do not want this image to appear when we are playing back our animation. So I'm going to double click on the layer name and also call it Bike Photo Guide, something like that. And then I can start creating my outline of the bicycle. And I'm going to create a new layer by clicking on this sticky pad icon down here, call it the bike frame. And here I'm going to zoom in just a little bit, and I'm going to use drawing tools that are in Flash to create this outline here, similar to what I have here, sort of this green frame and sort of red tires. And I'm making this purposely different colors so that you can just see the different elements of the bicycle here. So I'm using my line tool, make sure I am in object drawing mode, give it a stroke width of perhaps 5 pixels here, and I'm going to choose a bright green color so that you can see what's going on here. So I'm just outlining the frame itself by creating these lines to just kind of create the major pieces that make up this bike frame here. And just a little bit for the handlebar as well. I'm purposely making this not particularly detailed. You can make this as detailed as you are motivated to do. Just a hint of a saddle here. And so this is my bike frame. And the next piece that I need is my tires, actually. So I'm going to use the oval tool. I'm going to turn off the fill color. There is when you bring up this color mode here. To the right there's a little box that has a white with a red line through it that allows you to turn off the fill color. I'm going to make the tires red, and here the trick is to start in the center, hold down the Option key and the Shift key to make the circle expand from the center out, and you can fairly easily, so I might turn on the fill color again, so turn it off again, there we go. And I'm going to do the same thing again, holding down the Option key and the Shift key, and start from the hub of the rear wheel, click and drag out until I get the right dimension of my tire. And one last little circular piece is the little chain wheel here that I'm going to, again, Option, Shift, click and drag out to make the little chain wheel happen here. So it's about all the detail I want, perhaps a little bit of a chain wheel in the back here. So this is my bicycle, and the only thing that's not quite right yet is the tires are supposed to be covered, or the green frame parts are supposed to be in front of the tires. So I select the tires with my black arrow tool, one, and then I shift click right on the other one, and I modify arrange to send them to the back so that they just appear behind the frame. So this is looking right. This little red circle here should be in the front for the chain carrying part. So this is our bicycle frame, and now we can continue with our starting to get our animation going for our pedal, and that's what we're going to do next here. So to create our pedal and the animation that goes with it, I'm going to turn on my guide picture momentarily here, and I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to call this layer my pedal front, because this is the front half pedal. I really am going to just use half of the pedal, in this case what goes into the front of the bike, and I'm going to create this using a blue color, and it starts from the center of this hub here and it goes out to about here, and then I'm going to just kind of simulate or make this pedal platform using a slightly different color so that you can tell the difference between the two. Oops, taking back one step here, I want to draw a new line, and it's just going to be a horizontal line, holding down the Shift key to get a perfectly horizontal line going here, and this here is a slightly lighter shade of blue, and this is my pedal that I want to animate. So I can turn off the other layers and to show you just the pedal. What I want to do, our animation is going to take up 16 frames, so I want to extend out my timeline for all current layers to 16 frames. So I click and drag down on the frame 16, I right click and select insert frame. It gives me a timeline for everything that goes out to 16 frames. Now we're going to create this animation for the pedal in sort of a, well, the traditional stop motion frame by frame animation. So it's going to happen over the course of 16 frames, and I'm going to define a keyframe for every odd frame. So frames 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, and 15 are going to have keyframes. Right click, insert keyframe. Now I want to change the position of this pedal so that it gives me the proper rotation. We want to rotate this pedal in 8 steps basically, so each rotation should be 1/8 of a full circle. In order to rotate this piece, I have to use the free transform tool, and normally when you move your mouse outside the corner, you can see how when you rotate, well, for one thing it rotates both things right now, and it rotates around the little white dot in the center here. So I'm going to press Command Z to undo that, because I want to have nothing selected, and then select my just pedal bar, and I want to not rotate this bar around the center because it should be rotating around the hub of this chain wheel. So I need to move my rotating point to the corner of my pedal bar, and then if I rotate it, it rotates around that white dot. Now, in order to figure out the exact amount of rotation, you could try and eyeball it, but I don't recommend that. It turns out that if you hold down the Shift key, it will snap in increments. And it turns out it snaps in increments of exactly 1/8 of a rotation. So the first snap point is exactly where I want this pedal bar to be for frame 3. I'll let go of my mouse, and here's my paddle bar and the paddle platform. I'm just going to keep horizontal, and I'll move it into place so it's in the right position here again. It's going to stay horizontal as it travels around the full circle. So for frame 5 I do the same thing. Select frame 5, right click, insert keyframe, select just the paddle, hold down the Shift key and make it snap to the next position, and then you move the pedal platform into roughly the right position here. And I'm just eyeballing this part here. It doesn't have to be mathematically precise, this particular part here. And we are going to continue creating this rotation for each keyframe. And I've created some of the additional keyframes offline here. So my paddle is rotating almost all the way around now, as you can see as I move my playhead over the timeline. And I'm going to just do the last position again here. So for frame 15, I right click, or you can go up here, insert timeline keyframe, and then deselect, select the paddle bar, hold down the Shift key, rotate, select the paddle platform and move it visually into the right position here. So this completes my rotation, and we're stopping one short of our starting position. So as the animation will start over, we should then see the full pedal rotation. And I'm going to change my frame rate actually to something slower than 24. 15 should be about right here. And I'm going to play this back by pressing Command Return or Control Return on the PC. And it should show us, well, the bicycle frame and also the pedal moving around in the front. So hopefully this will come across in the recording as well. So now I'm done with my basic animation of half of the pedal. And as you can see here, when I zoom out just a little bit and I move my playhead across the timeline, that the pedal indeed moves nicely across or around the proper rotation point, which is the hub of this chain wheel here. And you can also turn on, what I wanted to show you here as well, is you can turn on a feature called onion skinning, that if you turn this on, it shows you sort of the previous locations as well. As I'm extending this onion skin, it kind of gives me sort of faded the positions of the other pedals as I'm going back in time actually. So I can see the entire rotation as it's happening sort of in a onion skinned version. Sometimes having the full onion skin with the solid shapes can be a little distracting. You can turn on the outlines, which only gives you sort of the outlines of the shapes and makes it a little easier to see what's going on perhaps. So especially if you're kind of later on, we'll do one piece where we sort of want to eyeball the next position, and it's really useful to have perhaps the first and the second step, and then to create one right in the center of it to get some smooth animation. We didn't need that in this case, but this onion skinning is a very useful tool if you are manually creating frames in between existing keyframes. So this allows you to view where the other frames exist and then to create something that you can visually place in the center, or to create one or multiple keyframes in the middle between those two endpoints, for example. So you can turn those on and off using these keyframe or the onion skin outline or onion skin buttons, and clicking it just turns it on and off. And this is our basic animation for the paddle. Now to get the second half of the paddle going, which should be directly opposite the current one, we want to repeat the same thing, but we don't want to just kind of recreate all these frames for second paddle. We're going to be a little bit smarter about it, and we are going to create a self-contained animated symbol that contains this paddle, including the animation. In order to do that, I'm going to select a frame outside my current timeline, and then I click and drag and select all of these frames here on the layer that contains my paddle front animation. I'm going to right click, and towards the bottom of this drop-down menu you will see a item for copy frames. It's slightly outside of the recording window here, but it will say copy frames, and that is what I'm doing, to copy all of these frames. And then I'm going to create a brand new symbol by going to insert new symbol, call it paddle animation actually, because this is going to be an animated paddle, and I'm making sure that the type is a graphic type. This is what we need to get this animation recorded properly or packaged properly into a graphic symbol that we can then reuse multiple times and offset the animation, because we want the second paddle to be offset exactly 180 degrees. So I'm clicking OK here. Gives me a brand new symbol that has its own timeline, and here I select the first frame, and under Edit I actually have to right click on this frame, and in the pop-up menu there is a selection for paste frames. That is outside of the recording window again, but it will say paste frames, and this is pasting all of the frames that I had earlier copied, and it's pasting them into this timeline that is our symbol. So now I've created the symbol. I'm done with that part. I can switch back to my scene 1, my top level animation, and if I look at my library, it will now have added a symbol called paddle animation, and this symbol by itself will have contained this animated paddle. I want to use it, so I'm going to select all of the existing frames in my main timeline, right click and clear these frames. So towards the bottom there's a clear frames, again outside of the recording window here. Clear frames just clears out all of these frames. Now I lost my paddle animation, but on frame 1 I'm going to drag my paddle animation symbol back onto the stage, and I have my paddle animation back. It may not be in the right spot. I need to make sure it actually is aligned properly with the proper rotation point here. So as I move my playhead, I've now created the animated symbol, and I'm using the symbol as my animation. Having done this, it makes creating the second part of the paddle much easier. I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to call it paddle back, for the paddle that's in the back of the frame. And to have it visually be covered by the bike frame, the layer needs to be below the bike frame actually, to get the proper 3D stacking. And here I'm going to, on the first frame, drag the same paddle symbol onto my stage again, and I'm going to align it to make it perfectly overlay the original one. So which is close but not quite what I'm after yet. I want to offset this animation by a certain number of frames so that the paddle will be exactly 180 degrees pointing the other direction. I can do this by having this symbol selected. I'm going to hide all the other pieces. This is the paddle that I want to offset, so I'm selecting it, and in the properties panel there is a looping option. By default, all these nested symbols, or these symbols, automatically start looping at frame 1. In order to offset it by 180 degrees, I want to start this animation at frame 9. When I press enter, it will snap it around to frame 9, and it will continue its animation there. But the trick here is that we are achieving is we have the second pedal perfectly offset 180 degrees, and as I'm moving this, you can see that it is perfectly animating both pedals. And if I activate my bike in the middle, now I can see that the pedals are moving properly in the right position, and the rear one is sort of obscured by the frame as it aligns with those frame pieces, and the front is in front of everything else. So this is the proper way to animate my pedal motion here. I'm going to play this back again by pressing Command Enter to just verify this, and here's my pedal animation. That looks just about right to me. So our next step will be to create the animation for the leg, for one of the legs, the front leg that is. So I'm going to turn on my photo guide again to get a visual outline of what the proportions and the size of the leg elements should be. I'm going to create a simplified version of the leg, sort of almost like a skeleton version that is going to have one piece going the thigh from the hip joint to the knee, the lower leg from the knee to the ankle, and then the foot will be at the bottom here resting on the platform. In order to do that, I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to call it leg front. On this layer, I'm going to create a few graphic pieces using my line tool again, and I'm going to choose a different color. I'm also going to turn off my bike frame layer here so that I have a slightly cleaner visual. So with this selected, I can choose a color for my tool here, and it doesn't really matter what color it is. I'm going to maybe create this orangey color here, and if I draw a line from sort of a roughly the position of where the hip joint would be out to the knee joint. So this is my thigh bone. I'm going to make it a little bit thicker so it's a little bit more obvious as to what's going on here. In fact, I'm going to change the color because it's a little hard to see. I'm going to make this a bright yellow so you can see it better in the video. So this is my thigh bone. It starts at roughly where the hip joint will be located at. It ends at the knee joint. Then I'm going to create a second bone that starts at the knee joint and ends at the ankle. And then I'm going to create a third element here out of the oval tool, and I'm going to dial back my size for the stroke width, and I'm just going to create a very simplified foot, if you will, like so, that these three pieces here together will make up my leg, and I get the proportions right by having them aligned with the original photo. So now I have my leg in place. Of course, now this yellow is a little hard to see against the white background, so I'm going to select all three of them by holding down the Shift key and selecting all three of them and changing the color to something that's a little easier to see. So it'll be this purplish pink color here. And I'm going to do the animation very similar to my paddle animation. In fact, I want to be able to see the paddle. At the next frame, for frame 3, I want for this leg front layer, I want to again animate this leg movement in 8 steps to follow the paddle around. So on frame 3, I'm right-clicking to insert a keyframe, or I can do that up here, insert timeline keyframe, and now I'm ready to move my leg. Now the thing that I want to point out here too is that there's a few joints few joint positions that should not move. For example, the hip joint is sitting on the saddle. It should never move. This rotation point here should just not move at all during the motion of the leg. The second joint that's important is that obviously the lower leg is always attached to the foot at the ankle. This does not move in this location here. So as my leg moves around, the foot will always be resting on the pedal. The lower leg will be connected at the ankle point. The upper thigh will be still connected to the hip, and the knee will just simply fall where those two pieces connect. So this is what we're going to do. And I'm going to turn off my bike guide here. So on this layer, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select my foot and I'm placing it on the pedal. Ooh, and somehow my leg front needs to be in front of the pedal front, actually, so that it covers the front pedal. So I moved my layer up. So move my foot onto the pedal because it's always resting on the pedal. Then I take my lower leg and I attach it to my foot. I want to rotate it. So here I need to again move my rotation point down to where the ankle would be located at. Then I'm going to move the rotation point of my thigh bone to where the thigh is located at, right here. So my thigh bone will be rotating around my imaginary hip joint. The lower leg will be rotating around the imaginary ankle joint. So in this position, well, what's missing here is the two pieces need to connect. And I make them connect by rotating both of them just so. And since we're using a real human being, these proportions will actually be just right and depend no matter where the pedal is. If I rotate the lower leg around the ankle, the upper thigh around the hip joint, the knee should always be able to connect perfectly just by rotating both of these pieces into place. So this is my second position, and I'm going to create another keyframe here for keyframe 5. Go to Insert, Timeline, Keyframe, and I do the same thing again. Move my foot into place so it rests on the pedal. Move my lower leg into place, and then I rotate it. Both the lower leg and I rotate the upper thigh until they have the proper connection at the knee joint here. So I've created a few additional frames here of this leg motion that I can play back here. There's one more position that I need to take care of, and that is on frame 15. I'm going to do this one more time. Insert, Timeline, Keyframe, move the foot into position onto the pedal like so. Move the lower leg so that the ankle joint is connected at the right spot to the foot. And then I'm rotating both the upper thigh and the lower leg so that the knee joint matches up properly. So this is my entire rotation right now, all the way around here. And if I play this back with the bike frame, this here you can see that one leg is now properly pedaling and that the hip joint does really not move because this is attached to the hip which sits on the saddle, but the leg or the foot follows the pedal around and the leg motion just kind of looks like this here. So we're going to do next here, we're going to do the same technique that we did before to package this entire leg motion up into a symbol by copying all of these frames here. And I think I can go up to Edit, Timeline, copy the frames, and then I can insert a new symbol. This is my leg animation. And again, I make sure that it's a graphic symbol. And here I can select the first frame, go to Edit, Timeline, paste these frames. And now I have my leg animation like so. And I can go back to my scene 1, click outside, click and select all of these frames, Edit, Timeline, and then I can clear these frames. And with this first frame selected from the library, I can drag my leg animation into place and position it so that the foot rests on the pedal And then when I play my playhead, maybe I need to move just a little bit here so that it should be in the right position. And now I can do as I did before to create the second leg that will be another instance of the same symbol that will be offset by 9 frames so that it matches up with the lower paddle here that is in the back. So I'm creating a new layer. This is going to be my leg in the back, and I need to position this layer so that it's behind or just above the pedal that's in the back. And here on the first frame I can again drag my lag animation into place so that it perfectly matches the existing one. With it in place, I should be able to, or with it selected, I'm going to turn off the front leg so I can positively select the one in the rear, and then under properties I can change the looping or the first frame from 1 to 9, which makes the leg advance to the 9th frame. And with that I have my both legs in place. One of them is behind the frame, one of them is in front of the frame, and when I move my playhead, now I have both legs pedaling properly. And the leg in the rear is not quite right yet because the pedal should be in front of the leg, so I need to move my layer down, and now it looks right. In the rear, the pedal in the back should be in front of the leg, which is even further away. So now it looks right, and I have my whole animation in place. One thing, it's a little hard to tell perhaps whether which leg is the front and the back. The nice thing about having these symbols in place is I can select one of the symbols and I can modify it slightly. For example, I can give it a color effect, and let me just make sure I have the right thing selected here. The leg in the back, I should be able to give it a effect to change the color, but somehow I'm not selecting the right thing here just now. So now I'm able, with it reselected, I can change a color effect. And for example, I can change the brightness of it just slightly, not quite this much here, but so that the leg in the back is a little bit darker. I'm going to exaggerate it slightly here so that you can see the difference, that the front leg is brighter and the rear leg is darker. So as they're animating, you can see very clearly the difference between the two legs since they're no longer the exact same color. So you can give a little bit of a 3D separation by having the instance of the same symbol in the back, give it a slightly different color. And you do that by adding a color effect to this particular instance of the symbol. And now when I play it back by pressing Command Return, I can see this animation going. So, and it looks about right. So the next piece will be then the flapping hair or the scarf that is flapping in the wind as the bicycle rider is driving. So that'll be our next segment here. So as I was recording the scarf segment actually a moment ago, my Flash program crashed and took the entire computer with it. And if you rewind just a little bit, you will notice that I never saved the project that I was actually using to create this video demonstration. So I lost that, and as a word of warning, you need to save your files. Don't do what I just did. Luckily, I have my previous version that I'm going to work with, and I'm just going to recreate the scarf element in this one here. So this is very similar to my animation that I created during the earlier portion of the video here. What I want to do is recreate the scarf element. All right, right-click on this layer and then delete the layer. So I'm going to recreate it by creating a new layer, calling it scarf. And on this layer I want to create a shape up here that will look like a scarf, and then I want to animate that shape using the same frame by frame keyframe animation that I used earlier. To create the shape, I'm going to use the pen tool, and I'm going to pick a stroke color. Let's give him a blue scarf, I guess, and no fill color. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and just back here I'm going to create a shape with not too many anchor points, and perhaps one edge like this here to make it look like a piece of fabric or a scarf that's flapping in the wind. I'm careful to actually close the shape, and then I can deselect it, reselect it, and then I think I can choose a fill color, and I can turn off the stroke color actually. So this is my shape that if I select it with the white arrow tool and click on the edge, I can see the outline of this shape that is defined using this path. And I was careful to create my shape in object drawing mode so that I can manipulate it now. So again, as before, I am creating a keyframe on frame 3, insert timeline keyframe, and here's where I'm going to use the onion skinning effect so that I can see my previous position, because I want on frame 3 I want to change my position. I click on this frame twice, and I want to just move individual points around a little bit. I'm going to make it move up just slightly at the end, and perhaps move the part that is closer to the neck down just a slight bit. So you want to just create some movement here from frame to frame, and this is where you can be creative and try and manage a movement that is actually realistic looking. I'm just going to do this quickly to again insert a keyframe, and I need to go to insert timeline keyframe, and again I'm selecting with the white arrow tool, click on the edge twice, move it up a little bit more. This is the upward movement of the flap. Oops, I didn't mean to move it entirely, so I'll just select a single point. One point here, this should just be staying attached to the neck, I guess, where you can imagine it being tied around his collar bone here. And so this is my third frame, and I have a few steps offline, and I just 10 more to let me just show you how this is flat so far. And I'm going to create one more keystone here, or keyframe here. We're going to insert timeline keyframe. I want the last position to be fairly close to my starting position, so I don't have a big jump going. So the earliest starting position is somewhere up here, so you can sort of roughly see where it's coming from. So this is where having these, where these onion skins are handy to see how far the movement goes and to animate the intermediate steps, like so. And if I move, now this is not a super smooth movement here, but let me play this back to see what it looks like. Command return. And yeah, this is a pretty poor animation, and I want you to spend a little bit more time getting this right. So I'm not a highly paid animator, but this will do for the demonstration effect here, to have this cape or this scarf moving as if it's flapping in the wind as the bike rider will be moving along. So what you have left to do, what I'm not going to spend much time on in this video here, is to flesh out the details of the body here. What I want to point out though is one piece, the hip area. You want to have something that overlays the actual leg to some degree, so that you can get the motion looking right. So I'm going to pause real quick and load up my other video here, just a moment. Sort of the hip area, there's one element, the leg. If it's separated, you can see that there's a shape here that overlays the leg shape when I move it into place. So as the leg moves, there's actually the sort of the back part of the pants, and the front part is sort of static. So I have two shapes that are overlaying to give some level of realism to the animation here. But to just show you one more time here on the previous example here, that this is sort of roughly the level of detail that I want you to do to create a character using real shapes that you create using the pen tool to create these different shapes and overlay them and stagger them, or make sure the arrangement is just right to get sort of a character that you will want to work with. And I encourage you to spend some time on getting the character nicely developed, so that in the next phase of this project, where we have this bike rider riding through an animated country scene or city scene, you will have something that goes nicely together and adds some level of realism. The last step that I want to show you here in order to finish up your project after you've created your character is how to export it and upload it to the website as required. So here's my project that I've been saving to a specific directory. I recommend that for each project you create a new directory where you save your Flash file to. Then you want to go under File, Publish Settings. You need to make sure here that your Flash, your Swift file is selected and your HTML file is selected. For our specific purposes for this class, I want you to rename the HTML file to index.html, and this is only the case for our specific setup for how we created the individual websites and how we are going to be viewing your animation or your Flash projects on there. So I'm setting this to index.html, clicking OK or hitting enter here to make the settings take, and then I can click on publish. This will go through a few steps to export the file, the Swift file and the HTML file. I'm going to switch over real quick to that directory. So here's my directory that contains my .fla file, which is my original Flash working project file. There's the Swift file that it just now exported, and also the index.html file. And these are the two files that I need to upload to the website. And I do that by going to my browser, and I'm going to log in. You have to log in using your ID, Q1, and then your first and last initial, and using the password that we provided in class. Of course, this Q1 will change as we go forward to different quarters. But I'm logging in, and I'm navigating to on my panel here, on my navigation panel for the website. I go to File Manager, and I should see a directory, or if you don't see it, there will be, you need to create a directory for P2 for project 2. It needs to have exactly this name. Navigate here. I've earlier uploaded a different version here, but this is where you have to upload the two files. Navigate to the same directory. In my case, there's a lot going on. I've navigated to the directory that I created earlier, and I have to upload one file at a time. First I need to upload the Swift file, and it will override it if you uploaded it earlier. Yes, I do want to override it. And then I can upload the second file, the HTML file. Do not upload the FLA file because there's no point in doing that. You only need to upload the Swift file and the HTML file to the website. The FLA file is what you need to upload to the Dropbox, so I can take a look at what you did behind the scenes. After you do that, you should be able to pull up this file in a browser window. So the website that you should go to is your user ID. In my case, it's Q1 for quarter one, my first and last initial. yours will change userid.uvehost.net, and then you should be able to type in P2 for the directory that contains the Flash project number 2, and that should be all that is required to pull up your project in a web browser, and this needs to be functioning. So make sure this works, and once you see this and you're happy with it, then you just have to upload the FLA file to the Dropbox, and then you're good. So this is all for now. Good luck with this project, and I will see you in class.